Hey guys, welcome back. And today we're talking about modules. Well, as much as we can, anyways. So when I ended the last episode, we were talking about different types of problems on the table, from player versus storyteller to making house rules, things of that nature. Now we're going to talk about something a bit different. We're going to kind of change gears here. Modules and running games is a very broad topic to me. I'm not a fan of modules, really. I feel that they're constricting. I get a little bit of claustrophobia, I guess, when it comes to running modules, because I feel constrained by the rules that the writers have put upon me, right? But when you think about it, for somebody who's starting to run games, for somebody who wants to learn how to put together their own stories and wants to learn pacing and encounter design, modules are really a good place to start. So I have to give credit where credit's due. One, off the bat, a lot of modules are well written. They can be a lot of fun. I just recently ran through the Topaz Championship for the 5th edition Legend of the Five Ring. That was good times. Two, when you start looking at modules and start kind of examining them as if you're about to run them or just for ideas, the writers that have put all their time and effort into writing the adventure you're about to play, they did a lot of research. Either they're looking at timelines and canon events and other NPCs that can be brought in from the setting. And let's be real, taking the feel of a world and the lore that's been put out and the canon that's been put out and translating that into something that somebody else can run and have fun with and do a good job with, it takes a lot of work. So my dislike of modules, not knocking the writers at all. I think they do phenomenal jobs. They put in a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears to make those adventures that we can play just right out of the box a lot of fun. But for me, I like having a little more freedom, primarily because I know my players are the type that really kind of go out of bounds a lot. They explore things that aren't necessarily there, and you have to wing a lot of things. You have to come up with a lot of stuff on the fly. So improv is a big part of my table time. So modules for me kind of don't really give me enough to work. But they are a starting point. So let's really look at that. The last module I ran was the beginner module for Legend of the Five Ring, right? L5 for 5th edition. And that was a very nice little setup, straightforward adventure. They had pre-made characters, the whole thing was just. And the way that it was written was unique because they added in rules as you went on. So you didn't hammer all your players who may be brand new to the system over the head with rules they don't understand. So they dole out the rules just a little bit at a time, which is kind of a cool way to do it. And the setting itself was very well portrayed in that module. So for a character coming into the game, they gave you everything you needed to do to hit the ground running. For a GM coming in to run the game for the first time, they gave you everything you needed to hit the ground running. As long as you read the whole thing through, you understood where things were going, understood the pacing, you're good. So modules, in that respect, can be very, very useful for a brand new GM, brand new storyteller. Some modules you'll see, like some of these, are ready to go right out of the box. Some are a little more loose and are just plot points. So, for example, the storyteller system that White Wolf put out for Chronicles of Darkness, it's very thin on the details. Gives you the overall, plot points and what to expect, but not a lot of breaking things down. And that's a unique way of looking at it. So that gives leeway to a lot of people like me who come into a game and are like, all right, well, the plot's cool, let me run with that, but I'm going to throw my other stuff in there. So stuff like that can be very well, written for that. And then you have things like Court of the Dragon Queen, which leads into the Rise of Tiamat for Forgotten Realms. That was the last major module I ran, and it was a lot of fun. However, that was a very constrained and very linear module, right? Which is funny because if you look at other DM modules like Curse of Strahd is very freeform in many ways. Great module, by the way. Curse of Strahd was beautiful. Had a lot of fun running. But what I found is that for a starting GM, picking up these modules, read through them, see how plots are run, see how arcs are made to work, and like the different possibilities. If players do this, then this can happen. This can help you kind of write your own homebrew adventure, right? And to be honest, there's no shame in taking from these modules and making, them your own. Changing details around, maybe different NPCs, maybe different locations. Maybe your timeline's a little different. Like maybe you're doing Rise of Tiamat during, some other tumultuous, events in Faerun. So there's a lot of give and take you can have with these modules. And so, for example, what I like to do with a lot of my modules, which is a little more beyond the beginner aspect, I write my characters into the module. So the PCs that are made for my game, that my players make, they're written in and tied in some personal way to the adventure going in. So when we ran Horde of the Dragon Queen, for example, everybody was situated around this one small little village, to the northeast of Waterdeep, past some of the mountains and past, east of Silvery Moon, is directly east almost, just about, right on the verge of the desert, right? So all the characters came from there, and the person who ran the village, the person in charge, the mayor, so to speak, had a new changing of the guard. Like the town guard was there as a small little trade outpost, right, for people who travel east and west towards Silvery Moon. And so when a new guard head came in, they brought in some more politicians and some other people who started, becoming more prominent members in the community. And these members were a little shady. So, for example, the main politician that was there was actually working for the cults. He was working for the dragon cults, and he was looking for this artifact in the ruins to the east in the desert that could potentially help out the dragon cults and, performing the ritual to bring Tiamat into the world. So what we did was we had all the players make their characters from this town or around this town or stopping in, and we dealt with small things in the town first. For example, a small little crisis that occurred that brought the characters together, and then we had, out of nowhere, a dragon attack. And then they investigated further, found out what happened was the dragons were drawn by one of the artifacts, and they attacked the town. Just small little wormlings, nothing big, right? They were not even really killed by the town's guard, they were just kind of scared off. But they did enough damage so the players like, wow, the town I grew up in, we need to figure out what the hell that just was. And so that kind of kicked it off and got them more involved on a personal level. And as they started investigating more, they discovered the tie-in with the dragon cults and the bigger overall threat to Faerun in general about Tiamat's rising and the dragon cults that were coming into prominence. Once they got past that first hurdle, they're fully involved in the adventure at that point. We were able to do things along the lines of the module, but again, this goes back to player buy-in, right? The conversation we had last episode. We had to make it personal then to some level to keep them motivated, to keep them interested. So the main politician that was involved in the town was the guy who called the dragons, they found out. And they were trying to chase him down because he caused the deaths and some of the major injuries to some people they really cared about as characters. So that type of thing really kept them involved and kept them going on, and they had a personal stake. And so what we do then is we take an NPC that might have at first looked like a minor NPC, but made him important to the character, right? Made him important to the characters, and that kind of propelled them up into like a major NPC. And what you can do at that point is start having these NPCs interact with the bigger plot in the module, right? And you kind of hook your players in at that point to chasing down personal, problems and personal like feelings for the characters that are tied in and interwoven with the module that you're running. When you do that, it's no longer a module. The characters and their players are going to see this with fresh eyes. So, for example, even if it's a module that some may have played before, like say a couple other players have played Horde of the Dragon Queen, now it's brand new. You add new elements, you change things around a bit, and it's no longer the same story. So that gives you a little bit of leeway. It buys you some time, right? Because if your players, and I know some are, the type that go and read the module that you're running, to kind of get a one-up, on what's happening in the story, when you start making those changes, you can start to throw them off their game. You can throw them for a loop. Because if you replace major NPCs in the book that they're expecting to see, and like maybe turn those into minor NPCs and take the personal NPCs and turn them into major NPCs, you flip the script a little bit, right? And you create this environment where the person who read the module might recognize the names, but the positions and the things that they're doing are actually being done by, you know, different NPCs, so they're kind of thrown off a little bit. And if you can keep that momentum going forward, you start taking things from a module and you end up using them like a framework for your own original stuff. You know, you'll build on top of the module and create something new and something that's even more enriching to your players. Modules are a great start. They're awesome. But like I said, when I run modules, I always add stuff on. I always change things around. Like the L5R module we ran, for example, came with pre-generated characters. I had everybody make their own character. We made the competition bigger. We made them a little more involved. We got a little more personal with the characters and interactions. So we had, for example, a Scorpion NPC and a Scorpion PC, and they did not get along. One Bayushi, one Shoshu. It was just not really a really fun thing for them to get involved with. So there's a lot of rivalry going on there, and it kind of made the story more interesting. And then we made some of the other clanmates for some of the characters, like the unicorns. They got along great. So whenever that clanmate would fail, the NPC would fail a test, or for example, it kind of meant something to the other unicorn. Like, we want to see them succeed. So it kind of takes what was there, this groundwork that's laid for you, and it builds on top of it. Now, when you're first starting out, no one's going to expect you to do that, boom, without skipping a beat, right? So maybe the first couple modules, especially if you get new players too to a system, you guys all learn it together, run through it, and then as you play through, you'll learn like what story beats your players pick up on. You'll learn what type of things they really kind of go after, and that can help you start tailoring the module as you play. You don't have to do it all at once. Remember, in I think the first video we talked about, you know, don't worry about writing everything all at once, right? If you don't feel comfortable doing that, then don't do it. Write it in increments. Write as you go. Maybe do a session ahead, you know, 2, whatever is your comfort zone, and start building things on top of the module. Things that you see your players kind of catch up on, play with those threads. See where they go. See if it's one of those things where the players just want to explore this, or that's really what they like playing, right? You can learn about your table by doing that. And then you always have that guidepost of the module to kind of keep you going forward, right? You can add your little subplots, you can add your little, like, you know, little customizations for what you want to run, but you still have that guidepost of the module going. And that's a great place to start things out, I think. And as you start doing your own stories and adding more and more, you may find that once we finish this module, like say, for example, Rise of Tiamat, let's say the characters are level 15, there's still adventuring time to go, and you're not sure where to go with them. Well, again, having written down what your players have done, pull back to that. Were there enemies they made? Were there allies they made that can open up more opportunities for adventure? You know, maybe after Rise of Tiamat, now they're known to the Harpers. You can bring the Harpers involved and actually have them kind of, you know, ask for help or ask the players to look into something for them. And you can spawn an entire whole adventure off of that with other major NPCs like Brunner up in the north with the dwarves. You can go with Wolfgar and the barbarians. You can have maybe Artemis and Trary become an issue. There's a lot of places you can go, because once they finish that adventure, they're kind of major players, right? They're known, and that can spawn new things. Now, when writing your homebrew adventures, that can be harder. Hopefully you played your players a little bit. You've had either experience with them as players, or maybe run from them before briefly, and you're looking to start something new. But harkening back to when we started talking about starting it theme, right? Theme, then, you know, system, setting, then story writing. Well, if you're continuing on from a module, you already have your system, your setting. Now you can just kind of tweak your theme a little bit and kind of go in a new direction. You can do from Rise of Tiamat into something even more horror-based. You can do more adventure-based, or maybe, you know, if you really want to go gothic horror, you draw them in the Ravenloft and do like Curse of Strahd. It'd be really cool. But anyways, when you want to start out writing for your own stuff, picking theme is very important. That theme is going to drive the core of what you're trying to do. It doesn't have to be all-encompassing and all the time hitting your players over the head with it, but it should color things. You know, if you're doing horror, not every moment has to be super tense around the table. There can be comedy, there can be romance, there can be combat, obviously, but horror is an underlying theme. So settings like World of Darkness, or, you know, Ravenloft, or, you know, All Flesh Must Be Eaten. Things like that can be really kind of fun to involve with, and that's going to maintain that main thread, right? That main theme, but you'll do other stuff in the course of the game that keeps it kind of fresh. So when you pick that and start building around that, let's do something now, right? Let's exercise. Let's run we talked about action adventure last time, right? So let's do mystery. So if we're running mystery, that's the main thing. We want to build off of ideas of something that gets drawn out. Conspiracies are really fun to play with mysteries. You can do this with almost any setting. You can do mysteries in Waterdeep, who murdered a nobleman's son, or you can do mysteries in World of Darkness. So for vampire, what happened to the Malkavian Primogen? Why are they missing? These types of things can be that big first question that drives your story forward. So let's go with World of Darkness. Malkavian Primogen goes missing. We have our main question. We have our main adventure seed. Now we need to start building around that. Settings obvious with World of Darkness. So that also includes our system. So it's vampire, V20, V5, whatever the case may be. It doesn't really matter, right? That's inconsequential. But we start building a story where we can start looking at, do we want it to be a little more political? Do we want to be a little more combat? Do we want to be a mix of both? Usually vampire games are a mix of both. So that being said, we can start talking to our players about, hey guys, I'm going to run a mystery game. We're going to do World of Darkness. We're going to set it in this particular city, let's say Chicago. It's going to deal with themes of intrigue and mystery and suspense. What do you guys think would be fun for you to play? And this is where you start working with your players to make their characters, because those character ideas can feed you storylines and plot subpoints that you may not come up with. I always, when I do homebrew adventures 100%, I want characters done first. I'll have my theme, my setting, my system, but I'll start making my characters with the players. What do you want to play? What do you want to bring to the table? And once we start talking about that, because you don't even have to have your story written yet, unless you really want to, you can just have those three, the trinity done, right? Theme, setting, system, done. You have an idea what you want to run, you start getting players to come in and play that type of game, and you start talking about their characters, and you can take their ideas for their backgrounds. Like, for example, if you have Malkavian, yeah, I'm a Malkavian, I don't know who my sire is, or my sire is the Primogen, and here are my drawbacks, here's my derangement, and here's my characters built around. I was a former orderly at an insane asylum, and I saw a lot of things, got really burned out, and that developed into some other things, and because I was there, I was embraced. That storyline from a character being made just to find out who that character is, you can plug that right into your story. Malkavian Primogen's child art, awesome. Your sire's gone missing. Here's what you know about them. Here's where you know they go. And that really hooks that person right away. Or maybe a Ventru who has aspirations to be Primogen and was working with that Malkavian on the sly to try to get a one-up and get political, recommendation to kind of rise the ranks eventually. Rising the ranks doesn't happen very quickly, but eventually. So you can have players that are working on characters that are building with that major NPC that's gone missing, or something unrelated. Somebody can be playing a Brewha. Yeah, I hate politics, and I'm pseudo-anarch, and I'm gonna just fight for the people in Carthage. Remember Carthage out over here in the parking lot, across the hall from the Elysium, because I don't like politics and whatever. You can have that outsider kind of be there and have seen or witnessed something that can give them clues to the mystery behind the disappearance. So when you start building this stuff in, you can start creating plot hooks as you go for your players and with their characters while you're writing the story. You can write them into your story. You can write them into their own little subplots and their own intimate connections to the story you're trying to tell. And when you homebrew, it's so much easier, in my opinion, to get player buy-in because you're writing a brand new story. You can write it for the characters you're given, right? You're not stuck writing a module where you try to recruit characters that are more, appropriate for the module. Here, when you start from square one, making your own setting, making your own game, your own story, you can write it for those characters. And that involves a lot of dialogue. You have to really talk to your players. You have to really think about what they want to play, what kind of characters that they have fun playing, that they want to make for your game. And you write around that. And that's a really good spot to start creating your story. And that's why I tend to like homebrew stories a lot more than I like modules, because I can write for the characters the players want to, right? Modules are a great place to start. They're a great framework if you want to use them as like a guidepost or a general meta plot for your story. Don't feel tethered to them. You can change things in a module. You can rewrite things to your liking. You're not, clapped in irons. Your wrists bound and unable to create. You can work within what those writers and those skilled authors have written for you and create something new and even more geared towards your players. But I really think that Homebrew is rewarding, far more rewarding than running modules. So when you're comfortable, I definitely recommend giving it a shot. Writing stories for your characters that have been given to you by your players, writing for those backstories that they crafted with you. There's something I think more satisfying to a player when they resolve a plot line, especially if it's a major one that resulted because of their character's actions. It's awesome to see that level of satisfaction. And it's a lot of fun for them, especially if you write them a satisfying end. Not necessarily to the character, but to the end of that story for them. Help them resolve some parts of the characters, maybe some of their fears, maybe some of the characters' goals. You can write those in. And you can do that with modules too. Don't get me wrong, you can slowly start to build that in, but those are far more long-term modules than adventure campaigns instead of just here's an adventure or here's an adventure there. We're just very minorly tethered together by the characters. When you are creating your own story, when you're doing your own homebrew stuff, you have every bit of freedom that you can imagine without even having to worry about, I have to rework this plot line so it fits this character. You write it, so you don't have to rework anything. Modules, though, good place to start. They can be very fun. I've been trying to run more to give them a little more of a chance, I guess, but I can't help myself. Every time I run one, I'm heavily modified. They're good, though. They're good places to start. And if you want a good, solid, I guess, lesson and progression of stories, check out modules. They say for writers that if you want to write something, consume a lot of it. If you like writing science fiction, read a lot of science fiction. If you like writing mystery, read a lot of mystery books. If you like writing stories for your players, read a lot of modules. Read them over. See what type of things you like. See how they design their encounters. And that can be a really good step in learning how to put your own encounters and put your own story together. How to do the 3-act structure, the build up, the twist, and the climax. These things are great primers on how to do that. There are some really interesting storylines that have been put out there for just about every single genre, and I think there isn't a game in existence for tabletop RPGs that doesn't have at least a single module out there. Some are built around, an introductory packet with modules in the back. So, for example, I think one of the last Star Wars games that was published has actually a little quick start adventure in the back of the book. And that's becoming more common, and that's awesome because it lets you as a storyteller, as a dungeon master, kind of see the examples of the stories that can be told in this. It's a lot of fun to kind of see what people are doing and kind of riff off that to start off your own adventure. Learn how to bring brand new characters into a new setting. So read a lot of them before you write your own. Understand how they're building those arcs. Understand how they're doing their conclusions, their milestones, because it's really a useful tool as a learning guide for storytellers and game masters and dungeon masters. I've learned a lot from reading modules, even though I don't run a lot of them, about story structure, about NPCs, about encounter balancing. My players might tell you I don't really listen to the encounter balancing. I tend to make hard encounters. I haven't killed anybody recently, so that's a good thing, right? But that's really kind of going to wrap it up for this particular episode on modules, etc. Now, we will be talking about some more things later. As a matter of fact, some things we just mentioned here today. So I think next episode is going to be probably about the 3-act story arc, how to interpret that, and maybe do some stuff with hero's journey and good milestones to generally have in games. So we'll pick up there next time around. But also, we got some new stuff coming on the channel I think will be enjoyable. We're going to start doing some storyteller Q&A. I'm going to interview some other storytellers and dungeon masters about their experiences. So look out for those. And again, as always, if you guys like the content today, please hit the like button and feel free to subscribe so you get alerted whenever we come up with new videos. We will be posting at least every Friday The other extras that we come out with, those will be on a different weekly schedule, so we'll see how it comes out. But thank you all so much, and remember, have fun.